Hello, everybody, and welcome to Travel Tuesday with Blue Planet Scuba. I'm Heather, and we have Christina with us today, too. So
Yay.
excited. And we are really excited to talk to you about planning an eco-minded dive trip. I know this is a question we get a lot where people are asking, what's a good place to go if I want to go diving and just minimize my impact on the local environment? So we put together some of our tips and things that we look at when we travel. And that's now on our website as a blog post, but we also want to talk about it here. So if you have any questions, please put them into the comments. We'll be checking those out, answering your questions as we go. And if you missed the live but catch this later, go ahead and put your questions in the comments anyway, and we'll get back to you. But yeah, so we're excited to get going here. Sorry, technology. Okay. So the first thing we wanted to talk about is figuring out where to go. There are so many different dive destinations out there and a lot to take into account. So one of the very first things we think about is finding a destination that has some kind of protected status or marine park or conservation focused plan in place.
Yep. So one of the easiest kind of things to identify is a marine protected area. Now, it's important to note that just because a location has a marine protected area doesn't mean it's going to be the world's greatest, most environmentally conscious area, but it's a good sign that there is some sort of thought and some sort of work being done in that destination that will help kind of guide the overall business and the overall way that marine tourism operations like dive shops function. So if they have to follow MPA rules, then it's likely that they are a more environmentally conscious and environmentally focused shop and operation.
Definitely. And the great thing too is, like we found, I mean, if there's a marine park, those are the places you want to dive anyway, because they usually have the best diving.
Yes.
People like to protect those areas. So sorry, we have a visitor here today. But other things to take into account, making sure that you are, once you do find a marine park that you want to go to, making sure that the operators there, both the hotels and dive resorts, are aware of what the rules are around that. I know we've been really fortunate to a lot of the places that we go to dive, we've been diving with some dive shops that have been instrumental in putting together those MPAs. So they're huge supporters and really want to make sure people are following the rules, protecting their reefs, because that's their livelihood as well. So it's definitely something to look into when you want to find a different destination to go check out. And what are some of the places, how can people find out where to go?
So the greatest tool, one I'm very proud of having worked on, is the Marine Protection Atlas. If you just Google Marine Protection Atlas, it is a global database of all of the marine protected areas that are currently or being planned around the world. And it's really great because you can go through and there's a legend that shows, this place is fully enforced, this place is actively being planned, this place is something that people are starting to talk about. And you can find a lot, if you go and click on an MPA that you find, there are websites for each one of those that will take you to all of the information that the individuals who have worked on the MPA Atlas have put together and have built out. So you have lots of information about what those rules are, and what the kind of conservation priorities and even what some of the ecological highlights are of those places. So you get a lot of information on a site and on a location just by going and finding either an MPA or a marine park or some other protected area. And like I said, you can do that through the MPA Atlas. You can do that through the Protection Atlas, which is the WDPA.com. That one does terrestrial and marine. But yeah, there's most places, if you just Google marine protected area and a destination, you can find out lots of information that way.
And you can also get in touch with your local dive shop. We love to go to, like by now, we like to hit those different destinations that do have MPAs in place. So pretty much everywhere that we go has some kind of marine reserve or
reserve protected area. Yeah. One of the biggest ones that I don't think a lot of people are aware is Bonaire. The Bonaire Marine National Park is actually one of the oldest, most actively enforced marine protected areas in the world. And it was established by the Dutch government in the 70s. And an incredible operation, and it's a very kind of rare situation because the entire island's economy is based on marine tourism, so diving and parasailing and stuff, kite surfing, stuff like that. But all that little marine tag, the little marine park tag that you get when you go dive in places like that, that goes to support the MPA. So more reason to go to Bonaire.
And I think, at least in the Caribbean, it sounds like most of, I think many, if not most of the islands there have
some form of, yeah, it's become there's been a really big push by a lot of small island states and small island developing states, both in the Caribbean and in the Pacific, to kind of take control of their own resources, of kind of the environment that they have that is theirs, and it's a way of them kind of reclaiming their space and moving into a new century, kind of couple decades post-colonialism at this point. So it's really a great thing to support in a lot of these places as well.
Awesome. So you found your destination. Now you have to figure out where you're going to stay and who you're going to dive with. And this can be a little more challenging if you're starting from square one. I know a lot of people like to go to places like TripAdvisor or different online directories. They don't make it necessarily easy to see who's doing, authentic, really eco-sustainable operations, right? So whereas you can look, usually if you go to TripAdvisor, sometimes you have to check under specialty lodging, but it doesn't really tell you what they're doing. And you can do searches through Google. But I know for us, like at least in terms of dive shops, there are a lot of programs that make it easy to see which dive operations are trying to be more sustainable and focus on conserving their marine resources. So Patty has their Green Star Award. There's also the Green Fins program, which is primarily out of Asia, right?
It's active in Southeast Asia, and then it's also, they just gave a charter to Egypt as well. So a lot of Egyptian shops will start that participate will start being able to find them, and it's active in the Dominican Republic too. That's a Caribbean site that they've added. So yeah, looking at Green Fins, the Blue Star Award for Florida and the Keys. Patty, the Project Aware, 100% Aware designation, which we have, very proud of that. And then if they actively contribute and participate in marine citizen science and marine conservation programs, so looking for things like whether or not a shop is a reef conservation partner. So do they, actively do fish surveys and coral surveys and things like that.
Excellent. So in addition, when you're looking at both a shop, if they have some resources on there, or maybe they don't have these things posted, and same thing when you're looking at hotels or resorts, check their website. You'll find a lot of good information that's talking about, not only what they say they're doing, but I mean, it shouldn't just be like, hey, we're an eco hotel and they don't tell you what they're doing.
That means.
But it should be within the operations. Ideally, they also have they're really active within the local community. One of the places that we go in the Philippines, Atlantis, I love it. They teach local kids how to swim in their pool. That's what the dive staff do on their days off, is they actually do a lot of community work. So in addition to, all the other things they can be doing around operations. So definitely check that out. Places that are doing the good work, they will promote it.
Yeah.
They should be talking about it. And I think the other thing too, when looking at hotels, we generally like to find places that are a little smaller, kind of more boutique-y, instead of the big mega resorts.
Yes.
Exactly,
Yes.
because we know that they're going to be more likely to be locally owned and have local staff working there.
Yeah. Making sure that when you look at dive resorts and resorts in general and tropical destinations, looking for the places that don't have the Marriott's and the Hiltons and the logos of the major multinational corporations, where your dollars are being spent at this hotel and then ultimately immediately leaving that destination. So you want to make sure that the money that you're spending is staying within that community and is helping to support wages, people's livelihoods, and making sure that those places that we're supporting have hands in the local community. So whether that be through like Atlantis's program, where they have Learn to Swim, that's a very common one and a really great one. There's a lot of dive shops and dive operations that we partner with that do that. And that's one of, I think, the biggest, most important things that we as divers can help spread is water safety and water awareness to local communities, who a lot of times have been separated from the water and separated from their traditional access to water as a result of the big multinational hotels and resorts. So that's a really important thing. And then the last couple of things, looking at how a big one is how do these places manage their waste? A lot of the small island destinations that we go to struggle with their infrastructure development and their waste management programs. So ask them how they do that. If they emphasize the fact that unfortunately we cannot provide the little single-use shampoos all the time, that's great. That's one less thing. That's one less piece of strain and piece of waste that's going to go into their waste management system. Do they have a no single-use plastic ban? Do they source their food locally and sustainably? Like, do they work with local farms and local chefs and everything, and specifically cater to more of a local diet specifically? Because I don't know about you, but I don't like to go places and eat the same exact thing that I eat at home. So I like to travel and experience local cuisines. And I want to be able to do that and authentically experience places and cultures and people. So hotels and places that really highlight those things are great ways to tell that you're looking at a really environmentally conscious as well as culturally and community conscious operation.
Awesome. So once you figured out where you want to go, next is preparing for your trip. Mm-hmm. So we actually, a few years ago, one of our instructors, Robin, did an awesome presentation on how to pack light for a trip. And so that's definitely something we like to think about as divers, because we have all that heavy dive gear we like to take with us. But there are a lot of other pieces that you can be thinking about in terms of what to take in your bag. So the first thing is batteries. A lot of places can't take batteries. They don't want your used batteries. Yes. So we use exclusively rechargeable batteries. We bring our little rechargeable batteries and chargers on every single trip for our cameras, flashlights, other devices. And that's just a great, easy thing that you can do. Another is thinking about your toiletries. So now it's great. You can use less and less plastic and less stuff that you're taking with you. We actually have found like shampoo and conditioner bars that you can use, lotion bars. And that's cool because you can even take that in your carry-on. It's kind of as a liquid. But just the big thing to remember too is getting stuff that's reef safe and biodegradable, because oftentimes if you're staying at these cute little places, they don't have something
major wastewater treatment facilities. Exactly. So, and I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize, and I know a lot of us didn't know, that the same chemicals that are in sunscreen that we hear so much about, a lot of those same chemicals are in the bathroom products that we use and the shampoos and the lotions and everything. So making sure that the stuff that you're using, after your dives and on the dive boat, especially if there's a freshwater shower on the dive boat, that you're using the same reef safe products at the hotel that you're using on the dive boat and when you're actively diving. So shampoo bars, we have a really great guide to how to find a reef safe product and how to specifically identify what's reef safe and what's not reef safe, as well as kind of the science behind that on the website as well. And just limiting I love my squeezy bottles. I have my reusable silicone squeezy bottles, and I found that I can get 10 days of shampoo in one of them. So it's a nice long dive trip. So what works best for you, whether it be things like shampoo bars or just making sure that you take reusable containers, is something to be conscious of.
Exactly. Perfect. Good point about the reusable containers. Also, on that note, if you're going to be, whether you're in the airport or, eating out around town, it's good to have your own water bottle, reusable utensils and straws, so you're not using plastic every time you go out. And the big thing that I've been carrying for a few years now, and I tell everyone to bring, are those little packable shopping bags. I always keep that in my bag because you could use that not just if you have to run out and grab some groceries, but also I've used that to carry dive stuff before. Like, you can find, you'll need it at some point. So it's always good to have one, and they weigh nothing. So
I have a tote bag. I call it my chicken bag because it has a giant chicken on it. I got it at a grocery store in Petaluma. If you are from that area, you know what the chicken is. But everyone knows that is my travel tote bag, and I take it on the plane, and it has my laptop and my passport and my valuable things. And then that's my grocery bag and my shopping bag and my dry things on the boat bag. So yeah, it's thinking about how these things can serve multiple purposes, lessens the weight, and also lessens your overall impact on the destination that you're traveling to.
Totally. Awesome. So I'm going to jump ahead to the next thing. So you've packed, you figured out what you want to bring with you. Once you're there, what to look for? How do you try to, again, mitigate your impact and on the environment, the local environment, but also help support the local communities? So part of that is when you're dining out, things to think about. If you've already found a hotel that has a restaurant, you know they're doing a lot of great things, getting, buying local, buying sustainable, or even potentially growing their own food, awesome. But if you want to go out and eat out on the town or try to find somewhere new, don't hesitate to ask questions. Check out the menu before you go. Talk to whoever's at the door, the host or hostess, and just see what they suggest. Ask them, if we're both plant-based.
Yeah.
So
yes, that's what we advocate, but everyone eats differently. So there's ways to do this that fit your diet and your lifestyle, and that can help you make the best choices. So if you're looking for something that is local, then ask them, hey, where are these ingredients sourced from? I think it is important to note, especially in this conversation, though, that in a lot of these small islands, things that you think about that are traditionally like, oh yeah, I'm going on a beach holiday, I want to go eat fresh fish and sushi and all these things. Great. But if you're going to do that, make sure that the things that you're eating are things that are okay to be eating. So don't go to the Caribbean and eat salmon. You'll look really silly and everyone will make fun of you. But there are great resources that you can, if that's how you choose to eat, there are great resources you can use from NOAA and the World Wildlife Fund that have kind of guides to different parts of the world and what protein sources are sustainable and are safe to be eating. And that don't necessarily put further strain on local individuals and local residents' access to food and food security, because that's one of the biggest things is we don't want to be taking resources away from the people who actually live in these spaces. So yeah, just ask questions and just try to eat small scale. That's kind of how I say, think local, small scale. What has traveled the least far?
Nice. Yeah, that's perfect. Also, when you get to the diving part of it, once you roll onto the dive shop for that first day, you want to make sure that they give you a really thorough orientation to the local diving. So, what are the rules, especially if you're diving in the marine park? Are you allowed to have gloves or knives? Many places don't want you to because they want to discourage people from touching things,
yes,
which we completely agree with.
Yes.
But other kinds of things. I know at different places I've been, they're very, very strict about making sure you're properly weighted before you even go on that first dive. Just being aware of what are the local issues. So I know another one that Christina brought up was being aware if there's stony coral tissue loss disease in the area. What are the precautions and rules around that?
So if I know we just had a trip go to St. Croix, I was just in St. Croix for 10 days. They are currently dealing with a really bad outbreak of stony coral tissue loss disease on the western side of the island that's kind of working its way up. When it comes to something like this, where it's a pathogen-borne issue, spreading it and helping to mitigate the spread comes down to divers, because number one, we don't know that much about the disease, but we are fairly certain that it is being spread through as a pathogen that's being introduced into the water at different dive sites. So Cane Bay, the dive shop that we dive with in St. Croix, is very, very open and very clear with when you get out of a dive from one of the sites where there is obvious stony coral tissue loss disease, they ask you to please come to the dive shop and please rinse all of your gear, whether it's in the bleach solution that they use, because they're very strict about this, or if it's just do a full thorough rinse and then let your gear dry fully in the sun in between dives. They're very clear and very open about that. So those are the things that you want to look for that are very specific to a place and specific to a dive location. It shows that number one, they actively care about their location and about the diving that they love and the locations that they love. Number two, it shows that they're informed and that they're aware of what the current strategies for dealing with these things are. and what the best practices are really for dealing with this stuff. And stony coral tissue loss is currently kind of only located in the Caribbean, thankfully. But there are other issues around the world, like in the Pacific, there's the crown of thorns issue. And so there's specific things like this all over the world, and pretty much every dive destination that you're going to go to. And you want to make sure that this is part of the preparation for this trip, is that you're aware of that before you get there, and then you ask the dive shop about it.
Definitely. Other things to think about when you're actually there and diving or getting ready to dive is talk to the dive guides ahead of time. If there's anything you're particularly excited about seeing, let them know. They'll be excited that somebody knows about their local destination and some of the wildlife that you can see there, and they'll be excited to show you. But also try to support them as best you can, because I know sometimes for dive guides, especially when you're like, excuse me, you want to make sure people are keeping their feet off the reef and not touching things. It can be hard to tell divers who depend on for tips not to do that stuff. So if you can also support them with that and be a role model for practicing good behaviors and other divers, that's really huge. That makes a big difference both to them and also to that local dive shop and the communities that depend on those nice, beautiful dive sites for their livelihoods. Anything else?
Oh. So kind of stemming off of this last point of it can be really exciting in a lot of places. We're seeing creatures that we don't normally see. We're going to Malpuska Island in the Philippines to go find pressure sharks, and I'm so excited, so excited. And you are in the water with a dive guide and you see one, and everyone immediately starts swimming towards the shark and being like, oh, pictures. It can be really stressful as a dive guide and as the professional in the water who is supposed to be, showing these divers the best parts of a reef and of a dive site. You can feel a lot of pressure to, get the divers the experience that they want. So if you go into dives like this, where there's going to be something that you want to see, whether it be something as little as a frogfish, which can unfortunately be knocked off with as little as a fin kick, or something like a whale shark or some other big marine creature, making sure that you as a diver are very open and clear about your boundaries and saying, no, I'm going to sit back here and watch, because I don't want to add stress to that animal. I don't want to add stress to the dive guide, and I also want to set a good example for other divers. And you'll see there's a couple of articles that we've linked in the blog post that just because an animal that's experiencing a lot of people around it doesn't react badly, doesn't mean it's not having a bad time. So
good point.
Yep.
We also have a few more additional resources at the bottom of that blog post. Some links to some other websites that have more tips. Sustainable Travel International, which is another agency or organization, which is helping local establishments, businesses,
operations, local tourism operations, kind of reach their goals as eco operations. So it's a good thing for you to see as a diver and as a person who's looking, say, okay, these are the goals and the standards that places have for themselves. So those are the things that I'm going to look for specifically.
And one other one, when you're traveling, we'd like to think about our carbon emissions, or maybe you don't like to think about it. But fortunately, there are more and more places that help you offset those. So one that we're really excited about, especially in the whole field of blue carbon, so finding ways to support finding ways to support the ocean, helping preserve local ecosystems, whether it's mangroves or seagrass or something else. You can start doing that now. And a really cool organization that's here in DC that's doing that is Seagrass Grow, which I think is a project from the Ocean Foundation. So we have a link to that as well. So definitely check that out. And so there's so much more we can talk about.
We can talk about this stuff forever.
And if you are interested in learning more about this and related topics, and you want to do a bit of a deep dive into this, we're actually going to be launching something we're really excited about. We've been working on this for a long time now, and it's going to be coming out in the next 2 weeks. we're going to be launching an online course, which jumps into this and so much more. It's going to be a 6-week-long program, and we're going to be teaching you about all kinds of things related to marine ecology and diving. And if you want more information, make sure you're on our email list.
Yeah.
So let me go ahead and go to our website up here. You can sign up for our email list on our website, and we'll be announcing that next week. So hopefully we'll see you there. But thank you all so much for joining us today. Let me double check and see if we have any other comments to reply to. Thank you, Holly. Yeah, I'm glad this has been helpful and giving you some new things to think about when planning your next trip. And again, if you all have questions about this information or anything related to that, don't hesitate to get in touch with us. Leave a comment on Facebook or YouTube or Instagram, or just email us at the shop or give us a call. We'd love to get you underwater in 2021.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, great.
Well, thank you all so much. We'll see you next time. Have a great afternoon.